Welcome to my final Senate prediction, so let's start. For a margin change already for Maryland. So in Maryland, we've gotten a lot of polls actually for a lot of these Senate elections, thankfully, and we got Angela also Brooks against Larry Hogan. Chuck Schumer still sending a lot of money to also Brooks, even though the polling does show Brooks edging out Larry Hogan and winning by a safe margin, as you can see. Even got Emerson, one of the better pollsters here compared to ActiveVote especially, showing also Brooks winning by 13%, and that is just above my safe margin threshold. So yes, I have Maryland Senate going by a safe margin of just 12 to 14%, with Larry Hogan losing against also Brooks. And now for New Mexico. In New Mexico, so you got Albuquerque Journal with a new poll showing Heinrich winning by 11%. But if we go to the polling overall, it's really not looking too good for Dominici, since there's a lot of undecided voters, and usually, not all the time necessarily, but when there's an incumbent, usually it splits a bit more evenly towards Heinrich. So I think, yeah, I'm gonna change the margin in this video, and it goes from likely D, just like Maryland, to safe D, but in a victory for Democrats here by 12 to 14%. And that's it for the safe states. We can now move on to the likely states. And for the first one, we gotta go with Virginia. Just got a poll from one of the better pollsters in the state from Roanoke College showing Tim Kaine winning by 11%, and that's really not a good look for Cow. It does seem like his campaign might be fizzing out just at the end. I also got this one from ActiveVote, but unfortunately from what I can see, for some reason, not on Wikipedia, but really good pollster poll for Tim Kaine. Can maybe even see this going to safety, but I'm gonna be a bit cautious with Trump, of course, and I'm gonna give this as a Democrat win by 10 to 12%, barely a likely state. And now for one of the most fun races in this election for Nebraska. In Nebraska, you got an independent actually, Dan Osborne, trying to defeat Republican Deb Fischer, and some of his ads have been quite interesting, going to the right of Deb Fischer and things such as immigration, budgets, which is so like unique to see in politics. So he's trying to outrun her from the right, especially in some ads. Doesn't mean he actually believes in that, but anyway, really good tactic by his campaign. You got these polls for him right here, and let me see, the Fisher internal. Yeah, I was gonna talk about this one. So you got this one from Deb Fischer from her own pollster showing her below 10%. Yeah, which is crazy. I don't know if she's doing that to get more votes or more money, but from her own internal showing her barely winning by 8 in a ruby red state like Nebraska would be embarrassing if that holds true. Unfortunately, as you can see, most of these insider polls on Nebraska are from either Dan Osborne or Deb Fischer, and the only ones, we got this one from New York Times showing Fischer barely winning by 2. I mean, it's still Nebraska though, and I don't see a way that Dan Osborne somehow pulls it off unless, I don't know, like Nebraska, Trump only wins here by like 12% on the state or something like that. That'd be crazy, but never know what's gonna happen. Still, I'm gonna change the margin a tiny bit. I think I had this 6% in my last video. I'm gonna have this by 6 to 8%. I gotta bear in mind that these undecideds probably will go to Deb Fischer. Not every single one, but that could be a bad sign for Dan Osborne. Still, it's kind of tough. I'm gonna say he's ran a good campaign, so that's why I have this below 10. And now we can move on to Florida. You got incumbent Rick Scott against DMP, the Democrat right here. And from the early, I shouldn't say this, but I shouldn't look too much into early voting because you can't really compare it to 2020. That's kind of hard to do that. And as you can see, Rick Scott, according to pollsters, is running away with it. You got Signal, which is actually a bit of a R-biased poll, showing him winning by 4 still. Undecided probably will go to him. Not all of them, I shouldn't say that. Who knows? Still, you got all these pollsters here. You got Emerson showing him winning by 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 6. So like 4 to 7. Any other pollsters from what I can see, and I can show most importantly, you got ActiveVote. I'm not trusting ActiveVote in this election. You got these ones. I still think we're gonna see a swing to the right in Florida overall. I think there's a lot of people moving there that are usually quite right wing. I could see this easily moving down to a lean R. Could see that happen easily. but I'm gonna have this as a Rick Scott win. My final prediction, barely by 5%. So yeah, I'm gonna probably like 4 to 6, but 5% victory, likely margin win for Republicans here. And now for the Southwest, which is really something I wanted to talk about in today's video. So let's start off with Arizona. So in Arizona, actually, for the first time in a long time, we've gotten multiple polls showing Kari Lake actually defeating Ruben Gallego. You got Data Orbital, one of the better pollsters in, I think, 2020. Actually, I think had Biden winning Arizona by 1. A good sign for Kari Lake just at the end of the election, so that could maybe see her doing better. You got Noble Predictive, another good pollster from Arizona, showing Gallego winning around by 4%. Activo has this by 10. Small poll size though, so Data Orbital also 550. Still, it's kind of tough to see what's going to happen. You know, if Trump wins Arizona bigly, he could easily carry Lake into a victory. And you got all these pollsters still. Ruben Gallego's a really good candidate by the Democrats, and I think he still wins here. The margin does drop. Had this, I think, 6 to 8 last video. I'm gonna drop this to just 5%. Still think he wins here by a likely margin, but still, Kari Lake is getting that last bit of momentum according to polls, though. So bear in mind. And now for Arizona, I should say for Nevada, extremely similar to Arizona. In Nevada, we actually got a bunch of pollsters. Is it just one? Yeah, we got a pollster finally showing Sam Brown actually defeating Jackie Rosen. And you got Jackie Rosen incumbent, by the way, and Sam Brown. Predictions still show this leaning towards Jackie Rosen, but a poster showing Brown winning is a good sign for his campaign. Still, if you look at it, 400 polls polled. It's not a lot. Even though for a state like Nevada, I mean, it's okay, I guess. But yeah, you got Emerson showing Jackie Rosen by 4. I'm so happy we got so many polls, though. You got Atlas, one of the most accurate 2020 pollsters overall, showing Jackie Rosen winning here by 2 to 5%. Still some undecided voters. And like I said, if Trump wins Nevada, he could carry, not Sharon Brown, Sam Brown with him. And yeah, I mean, I think Jackie Rosen's still going to win here, but the margin yet again does drop from my last prediction. And I think Jackie Rosen wins here by 5% around that margin. So yeah, bit of a margin drop, 4 to 6, aka 5%. And that's it for the likely states. So as you can see, very close race. But now we can move on to the lean races. So let's start off with Montana. Yeah, in Montana, you got incumbent Jon Tester running in a ruby red state against Tim Sheehy, the Republican candidate, who's been an okay candidate so far, and that's why the polls and the polling industry does show him flipping the seat for the Republicans. Still, you got these pollsters. Emerson, yeah, I gotta talk about Emerson, which, thank God for Emerson. 1,000 people polled, likely voters, and they show Tim Sheehy barely winning by 3%. And that's by far the best poll for Jon Tester in, I think, months. Still, that does have Sheehy winning by 3%. You also got these ones. You got Montana showing a tied race. I should say MSU tied race. But the latest poll from Montana, from Emerson, has Sheehy winning by 3 to 5%. And that is why I'm going to be a bit cautious, because he's the incumbent. And I'm going to drop the margin from likely R, my last prediction, to lean R in my final Senate video. And I think Jon Tester, he still has like a 30% chance of winning because he's the incumbent and just because of his past. But I'm just going to guess that it's just going to be too much for him. And yeah, I know there's a libertarian candidate, which could be basically if Jon Tester wins, probably going to be because of the libertarian, or if abortion's #1 issue. But yeah, I have Tim Sheehy flipping the seat and winning by 3 to 5%. We can move on to Michigan. Thankfully, we got more polls, and I'm so happy about that. I can't say that. I can't state that enough times. I was scared for a moment we were not gonna get enough pollsters in this election, but thankfully we got it. So we got Slotkin, kind of like a centrist, against Mike Rogers, who is okay for the Republicans. You got predictions showing this all over the place from toss-up all the way to likely D. And active vote, ew. You got, for the latest poll, we got Marist, who just dropped a poll showing Slogan winning by around 5%, and they have a lot of 14,000, almost, that's a lot of people polled. Still, you got Atlas, one of the most accurate 2020 pollsters, showing Slogan by 3, while Marist, Marist is one of the more accurate 2022 pollsters. But because of that, I'm going to have this right in the middle, and I'm going to have this as a Slogan win by 3 to 5%, so barely below a likely margin, just like Montana. But still, I do see Democrats keeping the seats and Slogan becoming their next senator, defeating Mike Rogers. And now we can move on. We can just talk about Texas. So in Texas, if we look at the most recent polling between Ted Cruz and his Democrat opponent, Colin Allred, unfortunately, from what I've seen on 538, not too many pollsters have polled in Texas, which is a bit of a bummer. You got, the polling industry has this all over the place, from TLDR to likely R, which is fair in my opinion, of course. You got Signal showing Allred winning by 4. Then you got Sienna, Emerson, oh god, Emerson actually has this by 1%, which is really interesting. Yeah, still, you got Sienna College showing Cruz winning by 3 to 5, like they said right here. It's tough to see what's going to happen in Texas. I still have Trump winning the state, of course. Trump is outrunning Ted Cruz by a lot. I don't think Colin Allred wins pretty much. I think Ted Cruz will win here by 2 to 4%, kind of maybe like a similar fashion to 2018, but still. In 2024, for my last prediction, I'm gonna keep my 2 to 4 margin, so I think Cruz wins here by 3% in my final video. And now we can move on to the Rust Belt. Let's go to Wisconsin, actually. So Wisconsin, like I've said before, we got a lot of polls recently, and we go to Wikipedia. For some of the viewers that don't know yet, you got Baldwin against Hovde, general election. Cook actually has this as a toss-up. RCP has this as a toss-up, but most people have this as tilt to lean D. And you got Atlas showing this as an even race, while we got Activo showing Baldwin winning by almost 10%. Then you got Marist showing this as a raise by 3%. Echelon winning has Baldwin up by 1. TPP has Baldwin overall by 3. SoCal Red Eagle poll has Baldwin by 1. It is really close. Insider even has Hovde up by 1. Still, it's gonna be a close race, but I think Tammy Baldwin being the incumbent helps her quite a lot, and I think she wins here by 2 to 4%. So I don't think my margin drops in my final video. I do still think she's gonna win, but there is the chance that, as you can see, that if the undecideds go for the Republicans, that Eric Hovde narrowly wins. It's kind of hard to trust pollsters, but for something similar in that fashion for Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania, we got really good news for Dave McCormick. So Dave McCormick, in the latest poll from Marist, actually has him barely losing by only 2%, even though they have Harris winning the Rust Belt overall. And that's really interesting that they're really bullish on this race between Bob Casey and him being a toss-up essentially. And this is going to be one of the races I really look forward to seeing what happens, though, because you got the whole polling industry showing, basically saying that it's within the margin of error for Dave McCormick to defeat incumbent Bob Casey. So, I'm thinking you got Quinnipiac 3, Atlas by 2, Echelon 2. I really want to change my margin. Just give me a second to think. I'm going to have Bob Casey still winning because he's the incumbent, but he only wins here by 2 to 4%, so Dave McCormick barely loses by 3% in my final Senate video. And now for the ultimate toss-up in the Senate election season for Ohio. But yeah, anything can happen in Pennsylvania. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a huge polling miss for Dave McCormick or for Bob Casey. And for Ohio, you got Sherrod Brown against Bernie Moreno, the GOP candidate, Brown the incumbent, every single pollster has this as a toss-up. And I'm not kidding when I say this. It is a toss-up because even the aggregate polls have both candidates winning, which is really tells you how much close this election is. You got Trafalgar actually showing, they show Sherrod Brown barely winning by 1%. You got ActiVote, Then you got University of Akron, but if you look closely, it's from September 12th. Yeah, so I don't trust that poll, unfortunately. The only poll we've gotten recently is Trafalgar, and even them, they're not the greatest, to be honest. Trafalgar, 2 to 3%. Akron, 10%. Oh, I just noticed that too. Yeah. I hope we get more polls on this race, but for my gut feeling, which is something that I'm really trusting in 2024, I'm gonna have Sherrod Brown winning here by a till margin of 0.5%. This really depends on how much Trump wins in Ohio. If Trump wins Ohio by more than 8, Bernie Moreno will win. But if he wins by less than 8%, I do think Sherrod Brown barely edges out a victory, and he wins here by, I'm guessing, like 0.5%. But yeah, for my final Senate prediction for 2024, I have the GOP retaking the Senate with 51 seats against the Democrats' 49 seats. Let me know what your map looks like. Feel free to leave a like, join the Discord and the channel membership. And as always, have a good rest of your day and have a good one.